Hello, I'm John Adams, editor of Digital Photo, and welcome to this Portraits video lesson, which is all about adding digital makeup. Now, you may recognise the model. This is Claudia again, and we're kind of going to move on from where we left off. We've done some retouching on this shot, and you'll find it on the disk. It's called Claudia2.jpg. And what we're going to do is take this and add some digital makeup. So we'll end up with a result like this. Now, it's quite a big difference, as you can see. If we just switch off the final result and go back, that's our starting point. That's where we're going to get to. And I'll just quickly reveal the stages before we go through the process. What we're going to do is add some lipstick first of all. So we colorize the lips in that way. Then we're going to make some slight changes to the irises. So we actually brighten the irises a touch. And then, of course, we can colorize the irises. In this example, we've changed them to green. After that, we're just going to add a little bit of eyeliner around the eyes. All done digitally, of course. And then we're going to add some eyeshadow and some blusher to emphasize the cheekbones. After that, we're going to do a little bit of work on the hair. We're going to add some highlights just by dodging the hair. And then we're going to add some lowlights by burning in the hair. And to finish off the whole thing, we're then going to do some very quick dodging and burning on the entire face, just to darken the shadows and give a more intense appearance overall. Okay, so as I'm sure you'll imagine, that's quite dramatic compared to our starting point. So let's see how we get there. Well, as I said, open Claudia 2 from the disk and you get this image up on screen. The first job is to add some lipstick. So we're just going to zoom in on the model's mouth like so. And then we're going to make a selection around the lips. There we go. Let's just move that out. Right, polygonal lasso tool is the best bet, just underneath the normal lasso tool. And we just find the corner of the mouth like so. And then click around. Just follow it with the mouse. You don't have to be massively accurate, but of course it helps to be relatively accurate, because we're going to feather this selection a little bit just to soften the edge once we've made it. So don't go too far away. You need to get the accuracy of the polygonal lasso rather than just using the freehand lasso. We just click round, following the line as we go, until we're back to our starting point. Once we are back, we'll get the familiar marching ants that indicate that a selection has been made and completed. And then what we need to do is feather the edge of that selection. So if you click on Refine Edge in the options bar, or go to Select Feather, and we want a feather radius in the feather slider here of about 4 pixels. So set 4 in there and click OK. That softens the edge of the selection so we can blend in our new lip color without any problems. Now we're going to create an adjustment layer. So bring up your Layers palette. In Elements, you can do that by hitting F11. In Photoshop, hit F7. There's our layers. I'm going to take it out the dock again, so I'm just going to drag it onto the screen, close the dock down, and leave that there separately. There we go, just move it across. And then what we're going to do is click on the adjustment layer icon, the half black, half white circle, and select Hue Saturation. Now this will allow us, because we made that selection, this will allow us to do anything we like with the lip color. You can see we can do some fairly gaudy effects, but we want to keep things fairly natural and fairly subtle. So we're just going to increase hue a little bit, maybe about 7, and then we'll do the main work with saturation. Yeah, just boost that a little bit, take lightness down a touch. That's the kind of thing, about minus 17 or so in lightness, about sort of 30, maybe a bit more than that. Yeah, a bit more. We can take 40, I think, in saturation. So plus 7, plus 40, minus 17 in the 3 sliders, and then click OK. And hey presto, we have some lipstick. Our next job's going to be the irises. We're going to select the eyes and just increase contrast slightly. So let's just hold down the spacebar and scroll up to the eyes. And then using the polygonal lasso again, we're going to, let me go in a bit tighter first actually. Just zoom in tight there. Polygonal lasso, and just click around the irises. If you watch the other video on retouching, you'll have seen that we clicked around the whites of the eyes. Well, this time we're going to go around the irises. Like so. There we go. Just to make a nice tight selection. That's it. Once you've done that one, hold down the spacebar, scroll across to the other eye, then hold down the Shift key. Remember to do that, or you'll lose the selection you've just made. You get a little plus sign coming up, and holding down Shift means you're adding to the selection that already exists. So there we go. We add the other eye to our selection. Just click around there. Back to your starting point. There we have it. If we just come back, there we go. You can see that both our eyes are indeed selected now. Now, just as with the lips, we need to feather this selection, so we'll pop up to Refine Edge, which will appear whenever you've got the selection tool highlighted. Click on Refine Edge and choose a value of about 3 pixels should be fine. So we'll go for 3 pixels in feather and click OK. And that'll soften the edge of the selection around the eyes. Now we're going to brighten them up first, so we're going to pick an adjustment layer and pick Levels. Click on that. And all we're going to do is move the white and midpoint sliders a little. Let's just move that across. Around about there, and a little bit in the midpoint. Just to brighten the eyes just a touch, just a little bit. Not too much at all. I guess you've got about 1.10, 1.11 in the middle slider. And somewhere around sort of 235 to 240 in the white point slider. Subtle change. Click OK to that, and you'll see if you click on and off, you've just brightened those eyes slightly, just brought out a bit more definition in them. And what we're going to do now is change the colour of the irises. Now, we could select the eyes again, but we've already done that. So all we need to do is a little trick. Hold down the Control key and click right on this mask here. Click on that mask and the eyes are reselected. So that's a nice quick way of doing things. Now we create another adjustment layer, so click on the adjustment layer icon, and this time choose Hue and Saturation. Now we can have some fun here, just as we did with the lips. We can change our eye colour to anything under the sun. We can go for some purple eyes, maybe an intense blue, that looks pretty good. Or what should we have? Perhaps a nice green, that looks pretty cool there. Yeah, fairly intense green there. Go for about 49 in the hue. Saturation, we need to decrease, that's glowing green there, so we'll just bring down saturation a bit. Ooh, about sort of minus 30 or so, minus 28 looks fine. And lightness, we don't need to touch lightness, we'll leave that on 0. So plus 49, minus 28 and 0. Settings for hue saturation on the eyes, click OK to that. And we have our green-eyed model. Now the next thing we're going to do is add some digital eyeliner. And we need a new layer for this, so let's make a bit of room in our layers palette and just click on the new layer icon. There we go, and we get a layer 1 at the top of the list. I think we're going to change the name of this. Let's just call it eyeliner. There we go. And what we need is a nice small paintbrush and a bit of black paint. So let's go in tight first and foremost. There we go, we'll start on that eye. Go in tight here, pick up the paintbrush, and then we need a really small soft edge brush. So just hit the left square brackets key until you get down to about 5 pixels or so. That looks pretty good. We've got black selected. Let's crank up the opacity to 100. We'll start from about here, and we'll just draw around the eye. Try and keep a smooth single movement. And starting from about halfway along, we'll just go along the lower lid, like so. That's okay. Now we'll move across. Don't worry about it looking rough. We'll fix that in a minute. Do the top lid again. There we go. And the bottom lid from, again, about halfway. Something like that should do the trick. Now it looks a bit sketchy at the moment. Let's just have a look at the whole thing. There we go. Doesn't look too great, but we're going to blur that now just to give a more natural result. Let me just give you more screen. There we go. So if we go up to Filter and choose Blur and then choose Gaussian Blur, we get this dialog box. We can actually blur that however we see fit to get a really natural looking result. There's our normal sort of unblurred line, but if we just nudge that slider over to the right, it just starts to blend in and look like someone's actually used an eyeliner pencil. So that looks pretty good around there. And I think something like sort of 3.5 pixels looks absolutely fine. So click OK once you've done that. And we have some wonderful digital eyeliner just to help the eyes to stand out a little bit more. And we're not finished with the eyes yet, because the next job is to add some eyeshadow. And we're going to do this by making a selection above the eyes. So it's this area here. We're just going to use the polygonal lasso to click around this area under the eyebrows. Something like that should do the trick. Then around the eyelid itself. There we go. Now you have to make the same decision on the other eye. So it'd be starting from about here, I guess. So we hold Shift and click around the same sort of area. Around the arch, down here and back in. Something like that should do the trick. That's about the right shape on both eyes. So there's our eyeshadow selections. And what we're going to do is feather these selections by a bigger amount, about 15 pixels. So we go to Refine Edge and choose about 15 in feather and click OK. Now there's our feathered selections. What we now need to do is make another hue saturation adjustment layer. So we click on the adjustment layer icon and choose hue and sat from the list. Now this time we need a different sort of setting. And normally, unless you're going for an outlandish effect and want to go very 80s like that, you need a fairly subtle adjustment in hue. So we're going to go for about -5 in hue, something around there. And we're going to do some more of the work with lightness and saturation. So we just boost saturation a touch. I think something around sort of mid to high 20s should do the trick. Yeah, that looks enough there. Then lightness, we're just going to bring it down slightly. We don't want a bruised look with the eyeshadows, but I think, yeah, about -20 odd, -22 in lightness, 28 in saturation, and about -5 in hue. Click OK when you've got those settings. And that looks pretty good. Let's have a look at full screen just to see how we're progressing. Yeah, that's good. And of course it helps to actually switch on and off your changes as you make them, just to see how things are taking shape. And if we do that with a layers palette, we can just start at the bottom, switch off all these changes. We can start off with our lips. There's our lipstick. Then there's our slightly brightened eyes. Change the colour on the eyes there. There's the eyeliner coming in to help them out. And of course the eyeshadow on top. And that's looking pretty good. What we need to do is boost the cheekbones, just to accentuate that. And we're going to work on this shaded area here. Now this is going to be very similar to the eyeshadow technique we've just used. Just use the polygonal lasso tool. We're just going to draw around this cheekbone area, like so. Something like that should do the trick. And again, we need to feather this, refine edge. Feather by sort of 15 to 20 pixels, something around that area. Click OK. And then make another hue saturation adjustment layer. Now we need to bring hue down slightly, so we'll go for a very small change. Saturation needs to go up like it did with the eyeshadow. It's probably a bit too much, something around there should be good. And lightness, just bring it down slightly. That's probably about enough. Yeah, I'll just adjust those, tweak those settings. I've got -4, +18 and -10. That's the 3 settings for that cheekbone. That looks pretty good. I'm going to click OK to that and accept that setting. And if we switch it on and off, we can see it is actually doing quite a good job. Very subtle change, but a necessary one. Okay, so things are progressing really well so far. We've got a lot of changes going on, but what we want to do now is kind of reinvigorate the hair in this particular shot. And we're going to do that by making a separate hair layer. Now, if we click back down on the background layer, then we can actually punch the hair into a separate layer above it. So we'll pick up our, I think we can use the normal freehand lasso tool to do this quickly. And we're just going to draw around the hair. And we'll try not to stray anywhere else. We'll try not to stray onto the face or onto the background. Just going to draw around the hair like so. It's a fairly rough and ready selection, but that should do the trick. Something like that. Now we can add and subtract from the selection wherever we see fit. We hold Alt and draw around a chunk to get it out of our selection. And we can hold Shift and select an area to add it into the selection. So we can just trim and fine tune the selection we've made like so. There we go, add a little bit there. That should do the trick. Not too fussed about it being very accurate. Okay, there's our hair selection. What we're now going to do is feather this by about sort of 30 odd pixels. So we'll go for an amount of 34, 35, something like that. Click OK. And then we're just going to hit Control and J. And that will punch the hair itself into layer 1. What we're now going to do is drag this all the way up to the top of the layers stack. So make sure you can see the top of the stack. Grab hold of it and just drag it up. Then release when you get up to the top. And there's our layer 1 at the top of the stack. Now, because we've separated the hair from the rest of the model, we can do anything we like to this layer without affecting anything else that's going on underneath it. So what we're going to do is do a bit of dodging. So we're going to pick up the dodge tool. It's down here at the bottom in Elements, or about halfway in Photoshop. Click on that. Make sure you've got dodge selected and not burn. Get dodge. Set range to highlights. And set exposure to sort of 4 or 5%. That should do the trick. About 5% is fine. Then we need a brush of a bit smaller than that. Use the left square brackets key to get a brush size of about 150 pixels. We're working on this layer, of course, so make sure layer 1, the hair layer, is highlighted. Then all we're going to do is start rubbing at the hair, like so. And what we're doing, you can see that coming through, we're actually accentuating the highlights in the hair without affecting the shadows or anything else. And the great news is we're not affecting any other parts of the image either, because we've got that hair in a separate layer. So if we do that little bit there, just switch that on and off and you can see the difference we've made. Look at that. Quite a substantial difference. So we'll do that all over the hair. I'm just going to increase my exposure slightly for the sake of the demonstration. I'm just going to take it to 10%. But you work away with it at sort of 4 or 5% because you'll get a better job. There we go. Just dodging that area of the hair. And that's working quite nicely. That's good. That's probably enough, I would have thought. Yeah, that's done the job nicely. It's just lifted the hair a touch without making it look too kind of overworked and artificial. So I'll stop there. What I'm now going to do is darken the shadows of the same area. And to avoid sort of ruining the work I've already done, I'm just going to copy that layer at the top. So that again is just Control and J to give me a layer 1 copy. And that's exactly the same as the dodging work I've just done. Only now, of course, I'm going to use the Burn tool. So we go back down here and we pick up the Burn tool. We're going to set range to shadows this time instead of highlights, and exposure again to sort of 4 or 5%. Now brush size, take it down about 150 again, that should be fine. And then we're just going to work away on that same area. And what we're doing now is we're boosting contrast effectively, because we're darkening the darkest parts. We've just lightened the lightest parts, now we're darkening the darkest parts. And that gives a little bit more colour and saturation, and of course beefs up the contrast in the hair. Now I think that's enough. It's a subtle change, but it looks quite dramatic. It doesn't look like you're doing much when you're actually doing it. Once you turn it on and off, you can see there's quite a dramatic change. So because that's maybe a bit too loud, all I'm going to do is turn down the opacity on that layer. So we'll just grab hold of our opacity slider, and we can reduce the effect of that to maybe somewhere around kind of 80% or so. Yeah, that looks good there. I think we'll just look at the dodge layer as well, and we'll do the same thing. Just reduce it slightly. Yeah, that looks good. Great stuff. So at this stage now, you really need to assess what you've done and decide whether you're going to make any more changes. And one thing in particular you could look at, let's just zoom in tight, are the eyes themselves. Does it work with the green eyes? I'm not quite sure. But if you do want to change anything, we've used adjustment layers, so it's really easy to do so. So let's say, for example, we want to change our eyes. Well, we go to our eye hue saturation adjustment layer, double click on that thumbnail, and we can change it again. We're not fixed. Because we've used these adjustment layers, we can go anywhere we like. So if you want a nice blue-eyed effect, there we have it. Minus 180 in the hue there. Anything you like, and you can have nice blue eyes. Click OK to that, and we've got blue eyes instead of green. Nothing is fixed. You can change your lip color as well if you want to, just by double-clicking on the adjustment layer thumbnail and moving the sliders. So there we have it. Once you are satisfied that you've made all the changes you want to make, and you're content with the look and appearance of your made-up model, all you need to do is flatten the image and do a little bit of burning over the face just to accentuate those changes. You can see we've got a lot of layers going on here, and it makes life much simpler if we can simply move to this flyout arrow and select Flatten Image. That's a bit simpler, isn't it? We've got one layer, one background layer. So with all those layers crunched down, we're just going to go up to full screen, pick up the Burn tool. We're going to use that setting of 4% in exposure, range set to shadows, and we're going to use a nice big brush, let's see, something like that. I've got 900 pixels or so. We're just gently going to work across the image, like so. And that's just brought in a bit more definition into the shadow areas. The real areas you need to focus on are eyebrows, eyes and lips. Everything else is okay. So that should do the trick nicely, and there's a job done. So quite a massive task and quite a massive change. But we've used digital techniques, using selections, adjustment layers, all kinds of fancy things to perform a full makeup job on our model. Hope you enjoyed that. Give it a go with the picture on the disk. It's called Claudia2.jpg. And once you've practiced the techniques and you feel confident in using them, have a go on your own pictures. Thanks for watching. See you next time.